Hello, everybody. So today I want to talk about Clear. So if you're not in the US, you may not have heard about Clear. And if you're in the US but you don't live in a big city, you may not even have seen Clear. But what is Clear? And the ticker symbol for this company is U, Y-O-U. So Clear is a biometrics company. It's a security company that uses your biometrics, mostly your face, but also your fingerprints in some settings. And it does that for identification, for identifying you. And it does this mostly, the bulk of the business right now is for airports. They have a nice healthcare and a nice stadium division, but right now the bulk of the business in the airport. They're doing this mostly through these booths, these kiosks that you see right here. You scan your face and then you just step in front of the line. And so it differs a little bit from TSA pre-check. And this is often a hurdle that comes when someone studies this company. So let's just go through how it works really quickly. So once you fly in the United States, right, you arrive at the airport and you really have three choices, at least at 54 airports. They are at 54 airports right now. You have three choices. One of them is what all airports will have and what anybody will do. Like people who travel very little, they do TSA. So TSA is you have a long line with TSA. And then you go see a TSA officer, they take your ID, they look at you with their eyes, and with their eyes they say, oh, yes, that looks like the driver license. Okay, you go ahead and you go to the physical screening. With TSA Pre, you have a slightly shorter line, you still see an agent, and then you go through a lighter screening. Namely, you don't have to remove your shoes and your belt. That's just a lighter screening. And with Clear, you have the clear lane. So the clear lane is you just go into this lane with two or three booths. There's a few booths. You scan your eyes in the booths, and then you don't have to wait in line because the line is always up to the officer checking the ID. Once the officer has checked the ID, there is no line anymore. So Clear, what is it? You just scan your face in one of these scanners, and then you skip the line. Quite simply, you're skipping the line. It's like a skip line, and then you just go through either the TSA Pre, the lighter screening, or you go through the regular screening where you have to take your shoes and your belts off. And of course, some people get both, right? Some people will get both Clear and TSA Pre, or some people will just take Clear. But one of the questions you have to ask is, do people who register to TSA Pre, do they register for the slightly shorter line, or do they actually register because they don't want to take their shoes off? And actually, Clear is introducing for $1.50 a month extra. They are introducing TSA Pre this year. So this year, you'll be able to both buy Clear and TSA Pre all in one bundled tinier payment. It's like less than $200 for both. You'll be able to get both. And then you don't even have to remove your shoes, and you just skip the line. You just don't go through the line. It's worth mentioning that oftentimes during travel season, if you travel a lot, you may notice that TSA Pre is oftentimes the same length as TSA, and this is true for smaller airports. And sometimes, this is true, I have seen this, sometimes the TSA Pre line is longer than the TSA line. But that's rare, but I've seen this for real. And lastly, what is for sure is I recently flew through my main airport, which has Clear, and it is true that the way they set it up is really this way. It's like you're waiting 45 minutes in your long line, and you see next to you another line, which is the Clear line, and there's nobody. And it goes super fast. And the Clear line is just people, they use Clear and then they go. And there's nobody using that line. And there's everybody waiting a long time in that line. Why is there nobody using that line? Because it's so fast. You just scan your face and you just go through. And so that's what the company is. That's a bet. In many ways, Clear is a bet on the inefficiency of TSA. And in many ways, the slower it is to take TSA, the more compelling it's going to be to use Clear. Clear allows you to not wait in line. It allows you to skip the line. And there's a few core questions that I believe one needs to ask. So first of all, it's the selling point of this company to the TSA, because this company is approved in more than 50 airports, and so they had to sell it to the CSA. So first of all, one of the first core questions when you're earlier in the process, when you're right here at checking the ID, who checks the ID better, right? Kind of thinking from a first principle. Is it a TSA trained officer with human eyes that looks at your ID and looks at you and looks at your ID again and says, yeah, it's you? Or is it an eye scanning technology with computer? So you're competing with human error in one case and computer error in another case. And I'll let you guess which makes less errors, right? It's actually the computer. The computer makes way, way, way less errors. Biometrics are so good. Human error of a human checking an ID, that happens fairly often. Actually, it's often a movie theme. You often see these scenes in movies when they have, a fake passport and the agent doesn't see through it. Well, the computer does not make that mistake. So that's core question number one. And to me, it's clear that clear is better. Oh, pun. I guess I did a pun. Anyways, another core question is, do Gen Z millennials, maybe younger millennials if you want to say that, and upcoming Gen Alpha, which will be of travel age, maybe 4 years from now, 3 years from now, do they want person-to-person interactions? Do they want to have a friendly interaction with a TSA officer, or do they want to run to the kiosks? And my guess is that, again, let me show you this. My guess is that we're nearing a world where half of the population, half of the traveling population, is gonna want to rush to the kiosk. They're gonna want to go to the kiosk. They're going to want to avoid that quote unquote person-to-person interaction, that friendly person-to-person interaction. They're going to want to avoid it and go straight to the kiosks. And this is a trend we see everywhere. At the grocery store, sometimes I see young people. And I guess I'm halfway. But anyways, I see young people, and I guess I do that too. They rush to the self-checkout at the grocery store, even though there may be nobody, there may be just someone standing around waiting for someone to come to check out the old way. No, they go to the self-checkout. They prefer it. McDonald's the same way. They go to the self-ordering booth. And so who does the so that's the core question here. And another core question, and this is related to the kiosk question, is who does the job quicker, right? Do machines do the job quicker? And I think it's very clear that the job is going to be done much quicker by the machines, which is why the TSA has been approving Clear and has been putting Clear everywhere, because it's so much quicker. It removes the burden off of them. And I guess this is my first music recommendation of the channel. I don't know if you've ever seen this clip. It's from, anyways, it's a funny clip. Remy, The Longest Time. TSA Billy, and so TSA Billy Joel. If you want to see some of the common problems with the TSA, this is a good video that I recommend, where you can see all of the common problems. And of course, it's called The Longest Times. The longest time. You'll be waiting for the longest time, right? It's because the TSA during travel season, sometimes you do indeed are waiting for the longest time. And you may remember 2018, 2019, there were issues in lines at airports like Los Angeles, for example, where you had 3-hour lines. Think about it. If you have a 3-hour line, you register instantly for Clear. It's not even funny. But this is a very interesting video in that it will tell you about the perceived experience of people don't want to go through the line. They don't like going through that line, and I don't like that line either, actually. So anyways, if you agree with the premise that waiting in line for so long is annoying, if you agree with that premise that I presented, then you could probably see why some people have no issues paying $15 a month for a subscription. It's no big deal for some travelers, especially if you're a more affluent traveler. It's not a big deal. And in fact, and I want to make this as a broader argument, is there is a non-trivial percentage of flyers who will do just about anything to make the experience better. They'll do just about anything. This is an example of management scholar, famed management scholar Henry Mintzberg, wrote an entire book about why flying is awful, and it's actually hilarious that this is like a 300-page rant from a big management thinker about all of the issues in traveling, and this is very interesting in my view. There's a bunch of issues in that industry. Clear is tackling one of the issue. Here's another survey: how many people would ever go to the dentist then sit in the middle seat of a plane? And many people would. And there's like all lists online that list what people would ever do than sit in the middle seat. And of course, a bunch of the explanation that you can find behind, say, people adopting the American Express Platinum card, which is a $695 card, but also the Chase Sapphire Reserve, is lounge access. People hate being at the airport so much that they'd rather be at the lounge, and so they get these cards for lounge access. And sure enough, the American Express card also pays for Clear. So there's a bunch of people who are willing to spend hundreds of dollars, in that case $700, but perhaps even more than $700, just to make the experience of traveling a little bit better. That's how much of a pain point traveling is, and Clear is tackling one aspect of that pain point. So let me go through really briefly. What is the business model for Clear? Well, their business model is a subscription business model. So first of all, the average Clear users uses the service about 8 times per year. Their retention rate depends on the quarter, depends on the year, but it's between 80 and 85% retention rate a year. So what happens is that people register typically at the airport because they see that line is super fast, and so they will register typically at the airport. And then once they're registered, how many of them keep the service? Well, it's between 80 and 85%. So I would argue that's pretty high. And if you were to use it 8 times a year, and you pay the $189 price, it's $23 each time you use it. It may be entirely worth it if you live in a major city. If you live in a city with huge lines, that may be worth it. And of course, the value proposition today, it is what it is. But if TSA gets worse, even worse in future years, and by worse I mean by how long the line gets, that's an easy sell for Clear, because if you live in a city where the line can actually get into the hour-plus mark, that's an easy sell, right? That's an easy sell because you don't have to sit an hour. It's not enjoyable, and it's also an easy sell if you get it through a credit card. And this is the Platinum, but there's I could find 4 major credit cards that offer meaningful credits for Clear. The Reserve, for example, offers $100 back for Chase Sapphire Reserve, but this one is the whole thing. If you have a Platinum, you get the whole thing reimbursed, $189. And I don't know what contract they have with American Express, but they obviously have some sort of a contract. I don't expect them to actually get the full amount. But we can see how this is a compelling value proposition for some people. So let's talk about a few things. Well, first of all is, identity checks are at airports, of course, but they are not just at airports. They're also at stadiums. You can also use it at stadiums, especially in VIP areas. If you go to a stadium, you'll see like the lower section of the stadium is usually heavily credentialed, because these are like the $500 seats courtside. Those are heavily credentialed, and there's people checking your ID, making sure it's you. Well, that could be a use of Clear, and that is a use of Clear. In certain offices too, they don't let you just walk into certain offices. For example, you can't really fake that you work at NVIDIA's R&D department and walk into the building. No, there's credentialed access. The same is true for hospitals. Many access to hospitals is credentialed, especially things like prescription pickup. Banks, you could make the same argument. There's a lot of areas where you need to have credential access, and this is where these Clear booths can be a substantial competitor to a security agent checking your ID. Because again, most of the errors come from human error. These machines do not make errors because they are machines and they use computers to check your ID. So why do I like the stocks? Getting into valuation here. So why do I like the stock? Well, first of all, year over year, so Q4 year over year, the company grew sales at 34%. And actually, if you compare FY23 to FY22, the growth in revenue was 40%. So slight disrelation, but not that much. We're still a stock that's growing at more than 30% for this product, despite the price, which a sticker price may seem heavy at 189. Despite that price, there's a lot of people taking that service. There is a strong guidance at 30% free cash flow growth. And on this channel, I don't use free cash flow growth. So I look earlier on the balance sheet, but they guide for the financial community as a whole. It's actually a pretty strong guide if you're trading, if you're guiding on cash flow. 30% cash flow growth. A lot of companies don't achieve that. So that's strong guidance, and they give us a long-term EBITDA margin target of 35% plus, which is also pretty high for EBITDA margin. And you can see how this business can quickly be just a money maker. It's quickly just a money maker. Once you got it set up, once you got your network set up, people just keep paying for it for the longest time, right? For the longest time, like the song. They also do buybacks and dividends. And again, I'd rather see just buybacks, but they did 110 million of returning capital to the shareholders. And that is excellent, because the stock, in my view, is undervalued right now, highly undervalued. And Clear, as another few good things going for it, is it's founder-led. The company is founder-led. Their founder is still at the helm. But maybe the downside is the insider ownership is a little low at 1.5%. But the business is still founder-led. And I've listened to the entire conference call. The CEO seems very motivated, and she knows what she's talking about. So that's good for Clear. And Clear is cheap. And it's cheap. Keep in mind, it's cheap for a recurring revenue business. This is also what we need to take into account. On this channel, I'll talk a lot about HIMS. HIMS is trading at a 0.1 now. So with HIMS being 35% more expensive, now we have another recurring business that's pretty close to that valuation that has not run yet. And these are my scenarios, my neutral and positive scenarios. So the neutral scenario, I'm using analyst number predicted at 30% growth on revenue growth. I'm using the gross margin of 62%. That gross margin, I believe, will increase over time. And I'm using the current EBITDA margin of the last 12 months at 6%. So we're getting a 0.13. So this is cheap. This is top 15% cheap. This is inexpensive. This is top 5 cheapest in my universe. Rule of 40 we're not quite there at a 31. But here's the thing. You saw they just guided for a longer term 35% adjusted EBITDA margin. Keeping in mind they just raised their prices, by the way. So that margin should increase. So if you look at 35% EBITDA margin, and if you assume 30% revenue growth, which I'm just going to use their free cash flow growth as a proxy for revenue growth, because I think that's a pretty straightforward business with limited leverage here. So at 30% plus 35%, I get a rule of 65% for a stock that cheap. And this is a stock which, right now is trading at 2.07 times sales is what it's trading at. So that's interesting for the next 12 months, in my view. That's interesting, and that's why I'm going to be buying the stock. I'm going to be beginning a position in the stock. But what's even more interesting, and I'm a very long-term investor. If I own a stock, I want to own it for the long run. And this is where it gets interesting to me, is they have a very low base right now. Only 6.5 million members and only 56 airports. So that's not a major base. And in many ways, this is a bet on people's dissatisfaction with the TSA, because whenever you have someone who has a bad experience with a TSA, that's a vote towards Clear, because they see people getting mad at the lines, kids getting bored in the line, long line, not very interesting. And then you see people just go through a clear lane in front of you, cutting the line, going straight through, and you're just there waiting, and you see people cut through the line. So that's an easy sell. It's kind of like at an amusement park when you see people cutting the line. It really makes you want to buy the pass so that you can cut the line too. And there may be some status symbol attached to that too. People may see this as a status symbol. Oh, I get to cut the line. I don't get to wait in line like other people. So you get an easy sell here, I would argue. And I want to point out the sheer size of this market. So 6.7 million members. Of course, the people who use their product are the more compelling buyers. It's more compelling to them because they fly a lot. But nonetheless, let's look at domestic travel. U.S. domestic travel in 2024, to the best of my estimate, they should breach 900 million people. 900 million people should fly in the U.S. This year. 900 million people. Think about that. So that's a very tiny fraction of the traveler market that they've captured right now. Under 1%. Under 1%. A little more than 0.5% is what they've captured. So can they capture 10%? Could we have 10% of flyers do that? Well, if we have 10% of flyers, that's a 10x in members. If we have just 10% of the flyers who actually less than 10%, right? 7%. If we just had 7% who just use Clear, that would be a 10x from here. And of course, these 900 million people, many of them are people who travel multiple times. But nonetheless, that's a huge number. And if you take into account that it's growing at 3 to 4% per year predicted until 2030, you still have a growth market with more and more people traveling, at least in the medium term, right? We still can't use self-driving car to do cross-country trips. So plane is still the main business. So anyways, I think it's an interesting business. I will be initiating a starter position, and I look forward to following this company. So thank you so much for watching. This was not investment advice. This is just entertainment. No financial advice ever on this channel. I appreciate your likes. I appreciate your subscribes. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.